What's cracking, everybody? Hello and welcome back to Gaming 101 with Mr. Berger. Tonight we're going to take a look at this bridge spam deck. Now this is a newer version of the bridge spam deck. The previous version that I was running, and I think I ran this in one of my first videos, was one that involved the Night Witch as well as the elixir pump or the elixir collector, which is what my opponent just placed down. So those two cards are definitely two viable cards in this deck still, but this is kind of the newer version that I've seen online. I got it off of Stats Royale. It's one of the top decks used in challenges right now. So I thought I'd try it out, and I definitely had some fun with it. I played some matches in Clash with Ashes tournament today, and then I did some more in a classic challenge, and I was actually doing quite well. I was surprising myself because I wasn't doing so great with the previous bridge spam deck, the one that involved the elixir pump. I'm not a big fan of the elixir pump, as I mentioned in the previous video. So, one quick question for you guys. What do you think? Should I try live streaming? I'm thinking maybe once I get a little bit more of a subscriber base, then that'll work out. But I thought it would be fun to try out, just live stream for like half an hour or an hour and just play a few matches, see how it goes. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Alright, so let's get into the strategies of this deck. Let's talk about some card replacements, and then I want to spend a little bit more time talking about the replays going on instead of focusing on, spending too much time on card replacements and things like that. I'd like this video to be a little bit shorter. So play aggressive with this deck. You want to try to catch them off guard, you want to try to outplay them, and you want to take advantage of all your charged units. So you got like 3 units in here that have a charge effect. That's the Battle Ram. After a few seconds it charges up. The Dark Prince, after a few seconds he charges up. And the Bandit. Her charge effect is a little bit different. She'll take a second to charge up and then instantly dash to the opposing unit that she's targeted onto, the closest unit generally. And she won't take any damage in that dash. So Bandit is really awesome for quite a few reasons. If you use her on an opposing Prince or Dark Prince, her dash causes her to not take any damage from that first hit, and as you probably know, the Dark Prince and a Prince do way more damage on their first charge. So, let's see. Catch them off guard, outplay them, take advantage of all your charge units. That's kind of the main strategies behind this deck. So the Inferno Dragon, let's talk about him for a little bit. He can tear up a tower. He's obviously really good on tanks, like a Golem or a P.E.K.K.A. or a Giant or a Lava Hound. But he can do so much damage to a tower. He can just blow it up so quickly if he locks onto a tower. So since this is kind of an aggressive deck, I would like the Inferno Dragon over other alternatives, especially like the Inferno Tower, but I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Now the Battle Ram. Battle Ram got nerfed recently. It was a little while ago actually, it wasn't too recently. And I think it just got like an increase in the amount of time that it takes for it to charge up, and it probably was another subtle nerf to the stats. You can check out the patch notes somewhere online if you're really interested. This was quite a while ago, it was a few months ago. So it's still decent in some decks, primarily Three Musketeers decks, because it still works as a lightning rod, since lightning strikes 3 of the highest health targets in the range of the lightning. Then it'll first hit the Battle Ram and then hit the 2 Barbarians, and thus serve as a lightning rod to your 3 Musketeers, because lightning is generally a very hard counter to 3 Musketeers. So although the Battle Ram was nerfed, it's still good in 3 Musketeers decks and these bridge spam decks. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about card replacements, and then let's just jump into discussing the replays, and we'll call it a video. So, for the Ice Spirit, you want another cycle card. Ice Spirit is one of my favorite cards because it provides a lot of potential for positive elixir trades. It only costs 1, and it can completely shut down things like minions, and not completely, but heavily shut down minion hordes. It'll provide a positive elixir trade for goblins and spear goblins. It works great against like Executioner and E-Wiz, buys you a good amount of time for only costing 1 elixir. So Ice Spirit is really good. If you want to replace it with something, just throw in another cycle card. Goblins, spear goblins, skeletons, maybe even like guards, but that makes your deck a little bit more expensive. You could try Fire Spirits, but they're kind of off meta right now, but they are good in some decks. Alright, for Zap, go to the log. If you want to keep that stun effect, then go for Zappies or E-Wiz. I think those two cards would work out alright in this deck, but ideally you want to Zap because you do want that cheap spell, and Zap again is a common card, so it's pretty easy to level and obtain, so I would recommend sticking with Zap if you can. For the Ice Golem, go for another mini tank. Go for the Knight. Although Knight was nerfed a lot recently, he was my favorite card. I want to say he's not anymore because he got significantly weaker over time. So maybe even a Valkyrie, since Valkyrie's been getting buffed. You can see in the replay here, my opponent pretty much gave up and rocketed my King Tower. And look how quickly that Inferno Dragon dropped the opponent's King Tower. Alright, let's go ahead and get into another replay here. So yeah, I wish they hadn't nerfed Knight so much. Maybe they'll buff him again. But we'll see how it goes. So maybe a Valkyrie for the Ice Golem. But Ice Golem works really well in this deck because it combos really well with the Battle Ram. While it charges in, the Ice Golem tanks for it. And it also provides you a lot of kiting potential for things like P.E.K.K.A.s, which are pretty heavy in the meta right now. Because you can place the Ice Golem just to the farthest right part of the left side of the arena, if that makes sense. So the tile just up and left one of your King Tower. You can place him up there, but all the way towards the river, and he'll kite the P.E.K.K.A. all the way across the map, like so, like I did just there with the Dark Prince. Better to just show you through example, right, than try to explain it. Sometimes I fumble my words, even though I majored in English. Alright, so that's the Ice Golem. For the Battle Ram, I'm thinking Hog. Hog might actually work out in this deck. So if you want to make it a Hog deck, I think that'd be kind of fun, actually, and it serves a similar utility to the Battle Ram in this deck, because you're not using the Battle Ram as a lightning rod, you're using it as a charge and damage unit. It does play different utilities slightly, because the Battle Ram can be used defensively. You can use it to soak up some damage, and then use the 2 Barbarians to play defense. Hog only goes for towers, but Hog is just great in any deck, so try it out. Maybe you could replace it with a Prince for double Prince. For Poison, maybe a Log to clear path for your Battle Ram, your Bandit, and your Dark Prince, your charge units, or maybe just a Fireball so that you have another mid-range spell, because you do want probably at least one mid-range spell in there. For Dark Prince, I guess maybe a Prince, but then I was thinking, you know, Dark Prince's utility is partly the fact that he cleaves, he does AoE damage, so maybe something like a Baby Dragon or Valkyrie, or even a Royal Ghost. I bet Royal Ghost would work out really well in this deck if you have it. But the Dark Prince is kind of part of a theme of this deck, and he did get buffed recently, so if you have all the cards that I'm showing in the deck on the top left of the screen here, I would highly recommend using exactly these cards if you can. Now the Bandit. Replacing the Bandit, it's hard. I was thinking maybe another mini tank like the Knight or even the Miner, but otherwise another charge unit like the Prince, probably. It's hard to replace the Bandit. She's so great. I mean, if she charges an oncoming Prince, she soaks up the damage. Like, she's just so powerful. But probably another, like, charge unit like the Prince, or maybe a heavy hitter like a mini P.E.K.K.A. For the Inferno Dragon, again, I like the Inferno Dragon there because he has the potential to lock onto a tower and do an insane amount of damage to it. And if you replace him with an Inferno Tower, since this is kind of an aggressive, pushy kind of deck, you don't have the potential to push and counter push with the Inferno Tower, because as I mentioned in my previous video, it just kind of sits there and doesn't have any counter push potential because it's a defensive structure rather than a unit that'll, you know, defend and then go push down the lane. Alright, maybe a mini P.E.K.K.A. or a Mega Minion in that note, or on that note rather, because those are heavy hitting units that play a similar role to the Inferno Dragon, which is blowing up tanks, right? And then they have very deadly counter push potential. If they're ignored then and not answered by your opponent, then they'll do an insane amount of damage to the tower, similar to the Inferno Dragon. So that's it for cards, card replacements, and strategies. Let's talk about these replays here. I got one or two more after this one, and then we'll call it a video. So he's given me the well played. I clear out his Zappies. I called them, what did I call them? Sparkies, I think, on my replay share, but that's fine. I clear them out with a poison, and I also chip away at the tower. Now look at how hard the P.E.K.K.A. counters my Battle Ram. It just completely shuts it down. He didn't even need to use that Log, honestly, but he did anyway. Now he doesn't have any interrupt in hand. His only interrupt is the Zappies. He doesn't have a Zap spell or an E-Wiz, so he can't interrupt my Inferno Dragon. Inferno Dragon is very prevalent in the current meta, so I would recommend having at least one interrupt card in most decks. You know, there's always going to be an exception for some decks, because there's other things that would be more important than having that, but in a lot of decks you want like at least a Zap or an E-Wiz. In this case he's running Zappies, which aren't that great, even though they got buffed and hit air, but they kind of do serve that utility of stunning, so they are pretty cool if you know how to use them properly. I'm still learning how to use them. I haven't leveled them up yet, so maybe I'll make a video on them once I get them leveled up and kind of figure them out a little bit. Alright, the Dark Prince goes in for the charge. The Dark Prince has that shield effect similar to the guards, so it'll soak up X amount of damage before it breaks, and then it'll reset his health to full, and he'll have a new health pool. Now the Inferno Dragon and Inferno Tower got changed recently, so that when the Dark Prince or the guard's shield resets his health, like when the shield breaks, it resets the charge of the Inferno Dragon and the Inferno Tower. So if they're charged up after like 2 seconds of charging, it'll reset it to as if they were only charging or only had just started charging. Alright, that's the end of that replay. Looks like I was able to play defense there and just kind of hang on and go for the 1 crown win. Okay, let's do this last replay here and then we'll call it a video. So this one is against a Goblin Hut deck. Goblin Hut got buffed, well, Spear Goblins got buffed actually pretty powerfully in a recent patch, so Goblin Hut has been very powerful ever since. Some people say that it's like one of the strongest cards in the game right now, and I would agree, it's pretty great. If you haven't checked out my Golem Goblin Hut beatdown video, you should check that out. Very powerful deck, pretty easy to play as well. Alright, so at this point, you can see that he only has a level 3 Witch. This is a challenge, but it's a classic challenge, so I'm not going up against the most serious players. Of course, as I mentioned in most of my videos, I'm not that serious of a player myself, so it's kind of a relatively level playing field for me. Although when I see somebody that has non-tournament level standard cards, like if his Witch is level 3, tournament level standard is level 4, I know that he's probably only level, 9 in his regular ladder account, on ladder. So it might be a little bit easier for me. It might not be the most balanced match. Now that battle round connected, and it did a ton of damage. So at this point, we're both kind of building up elixir. I'll double time it here for a second, just so that we don't waste time with dead time. Alright, here goes in the Bandit with the Ice Golem tanking for it. Bandit gets distracted by the Giant, but of course I have the Inferno Dragon, and he does his job very well, blowing up that tank. The Bandit charges in onto the Bomber. Bomber is pretty off meta, it has been for a while, you don't see it very often. Bandit makes quick work of it. I zap to clear out some of those goblins, and that allows the battle ram to connect and do some good damage, blow up the tower. He opts the fireball, probably not the best move. Alright, at this point I'm just getting some damage off on both towers. I've got an advantage, there's only 45 seconds left in the game, so I pretty much just need to play defense, and we'll see how I do. Although this deck is aggressive, you can kind of play some defense and go for counter pushes when possible. You always want to go for like positive elixir trades and effective counter pushes in just about any deck. So like that Inferno Dragon is great on defense and then turning into a very powerful and deadly counter push. You combo him with like the Battle Ram or the Bandit or the Dark Prince and it just does work. And I was thinking maybe another replacement for one of your spells could even be arrows. That might work out in this deck because it would clear out the way quite well. At this point, I don't quite finish off his second tower, his king tower, but I get both of his princess towers. And that is my video on the new bridge spam deck. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I'm going to keep playing it and finish that challenge. I haven't completed it yet, so we'll see how it goes. If you have any suggestions for future videos or anything like that, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. Thank you everybody for watching, and have a good night.